5th of December, Rabbi Furst, Mishna Berura, Hanukah.
There was great distress over them. They caused them a great distress, oppression and distress.
Until Hashem showed his mercy and delivered them. The governor of Hashmonoi HaKohanim HaGadolim, they strengthened the sons of the Hashmonoim, or Kohanim Gadolim, Hargim Hoshio Utrel Miodam. They killed them and they redeemed Israel from their hands. Hazar Malchus Israel, and returned the kingship to Israel. Yoter Yesser al Messiah Shana for more than 200 years. Ad Chorban until the second destruction. Shagavri Israel al Oivechem the Ibdum, and when Israel conquered their enemies or fought their enemies and conquered them, the Chuf tells the Chuf Chebe Kislev. I was on 25th of Kislev. Nisul Hechel, they went to the Beis Hamikdash. Lo Matzu Shemen Tahar, Mikdash al Pach Echad. They only found a small vial of oil that was sealed in Tahar. Shahaya Munach Lasosam Shel Kohen Gadol. They had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it. Lo Hayabo Lahadlik Ella Yom Echad Bavad. There was only enough oil to light for one night. And they made a miracle. Vidliku b'mimeno neros ma'aracha shmona yomim, and there was a miracle done. They would light from it the nails in the menorah, and it was for 8 days. Bakshu Zaysim, until they're able to harvest some olives, Botzi Sheventar, and then make new oil from them.
Well, the point we left off sort of in the middle of a question yesterday that Lou had asked, that we see that the Beis Hamikdash was retaken on Chavchei Hanukah, and the miracle was made, and but as we know through the history of the whole era, that the war against the Hashmonaim wars went on for another 30, at least another 30 years after the time when they retook the Beis Hamikdash. So the question is, what was the real big celebration here? So I was answering that the whole point of, as we see from Mishna Berura, which is really it's almost, I think, almost a direct quote from the Rambam. Everything was reading in the Shar Tzion and Sipkat Nalef mentions this is the Rambam, so I think it's more or less a straight quote from the Rambam, which is also based largely on the Gemara, or summaries in Thompson of the Gemara, that we weren't interested in a physical military victory. That wasn't the main object. I mean, we needed that had to happen. But just as the Greeks and the Greek Syrians, those who opposed us, the Mishyavnim amongst us, they were interested in a spiritual war. So when the spiritual war was over, and that spiritual war ended when we took the Beis Hamikdash, because that was the target. The target of the military actions of the Greeks and the Syrian Greeks was to capture the Beis Hamikdash, which would, in their eyes, in their hopes, that would break the resolve of the Jewish people and would force them to recompense and submit, right? But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Hashmonaim the ability to miraculously fight off the many more enemies than they could ever naturally overcome. So Kadosh Baruch Hu showed Klal Yisrael that he was willing to stand by Klal Yisrael, even though we had sunk very low. Our level of observance in terms of, we lost the Beis Hamikdash because our level of observance was lacking, and that's why it was specifically through the Kohanim that the miracles were made through the Kohanim, because they were the ones who were willing to be Moser Nefesh to regain the Beis Hamikdash, and that was as I mentioned, the target of our enemies was the Beis Hamikdash. So once the Beis Hamikdash was retaken, right, that represented the victory, the spiritual victory. So even though there might have been military actions and political disputes for many years, decades even, after the actual spiritual victory, but that was the main victory that which we were interested in. Obviously, we wanted to have complete autonomy and freedom from our enemies, but that was very difficult to do because there were so many misyavnim. The body of Klal Yisrael was so infected with poison and tumah from within, that was very difficult to rid it all at once, and so had to take a long process to do. But once the Beis Hamikdash had been retaken, that represented the end of the desire of our enemies to try and overcome us. So that was the spiritual victory, which was most significant. That was the real victory that we needed. So therefore, that's why we celebrate the Hanukah at this time, because it was represented the spiritual victory, which was really the victory in spiritual senses against our physical enemies. So that's why we have these 8 days of Hanukah. Okay, we continue on. מפני זה התקינו חכמים.
Lost my place. לפני זה התקינו חכמים שבעושו הדור. Because of this, the Chacham in that generation were Masakin, Shiyu, Hayimi, Ma'ela, at these days, Shiyu, Chavchet, Kislev, the beginning of Chavchet, the Kislev, the beginning of the 25th of Kislev, you may Simcha Vahala, there should be days of joy and praise, Umadlikin Bahan, Neros Be'erev, Piskei Habatim, Bechol Laila V'Laila, Mishmonos Halelos. And they would light at the doors in the evening at the doors of all the houses, every night for the 8 nights. But Neros Hanos, the Haneos, the Galos Hanes, and these lights would reveal the miracle. Behu mitzvah midivrei sofrim the kriyas Megillah. Kriyas Megillah. And this is a mitzvah of the Rabbanim, just like Kriyas Megillah is. Yom Elu Hein Nikroan Chanukah. Excuse me. On these days are called Hanukah. Rotzon, which is say Hanukah on the 25th. Shabayom Kovchei Hayu Merivehem. Because on the 25th they conquered their enemies. And since they are days of joy and praise, therefore it's usher to make a panim or to fast on those days. Nogim Haniyim L'Sabev B'Chanukah Al Pischehem V'Yesh Tam, and the poor people would go out on Hanukkah on their doors to collect. Is that what you said?
Savev, they would circulate from door to door during Hanukkah. The poor people would circulate from door to door on Hanukkah to collect tzedakah for themselves.
And there's approved. It's acceptable.
No, there's a reason for this. There's a specific reason for this. If you look at the Sharatzin, he says Ayin Prima Gudin. You look at the Prima Gudin. If I'm not mistaken, the Prima Gudin mentions that our enemies were gozer against Torah, Avodah, V'Gemilos Chasadim. They were against learning Torah and keeping mitzvahs. They were against Avodah. They were against the Beis Hamikdash. right? And they were against Gimel Sasadin. They were against us doing acts of kindness amongst each other. So therefore, as a tikkun for this, right? We reinforced on Hanukah all of these different things. Torah is they look in the Svarim and they speak very strongly about how powerful the days of Hanukah are for learning. Right, it's days which shouldn't really be wasted. I know that sometimes you have parties and things like this, and especially in yeshivas, they give the week off or half days off. And there's a lot of bittul Torah going into the days of Hanukkah, unfortunately. But Hanukkah, if you look at the Sfarim, they speak exactly the opposite. That the days of Hanukkah are very special days, and if you use the days of Hanukkah properly, you can make very strong inroads into being successful in Torah. So Hanukkah is a very special time for Torah. Number one, avoda. That's obviously the Hallel that we say in the base Knesset in davening, and also the avoda of the lighting the menorah. We'll see that lighting the menorah, it's like persons of the Kohen who's lighting the menorah in the base of Mikdash, and so therefore they also were enacted a time for the Aniyim to go around to collect, because they want to also increase and reinforce the third pillar of the world upon which it rests, which is Gemilus Chasadim. So that's basically, as I remember, the Prima Godim.
Okay.
And also we'll see as we get further on that the also in relation to what I said at the beginning, that the infection of our enemies, even from within us, was very great. And we'll see that there's a special halacha about it, halachas ner Hanukah, which you don't see in too many other halachas. It's a question of chashad. If there's a question is if a person he has to make sure that people don't suspect him of not lighting. Right? Meaning that we'll have the case where a person has two doorways. One's leading to, say, the north road, and one's leading to the south road. So the people on the north road can't see him, and the people on the south road can't see him lighting either. So therefore, he has to light on both the north side of his house and the south side of his house. And this is, as the Mishna Berura, as the poskim explained, this is to avoid chashad, to avoid what we call suspicion. What's the suspicion? What we care if a person's, we don't see very much in other halachas. And don't forget, this is a halacha which is the Rabbanan. It's not a halacha which is the Raisa, right? So we don't see that. Usually, you have to be careful to make sure no one will suspect you of not doing something. There's such a thing as Morris Ayin, right? You have Morris Ayin, which is related to it. Chashad's a little bit of a different type of a getter. Maybe we can explain a little bit more about that later on. But this concept of chashad is, I think, I haven't been able to find any proofs, but I always tell to myself that because of this there was the Klal Yisrael was so infected with traitors that this was a way of establishing publicly those people who were in favor of the victory and the miracle that Kadosh Baruch Hu had done. I mean, if a person was a real traitor to the Chazal, Chachamim, to the Jewish and the Torah way of life, if they were a real traitor, they would have a very difficult time lighting a menorah, except if they was afraid for their lives. But it was a way of gaining public recognition of those who were faithful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the ones who serve him. So we'll talk about more about chashad as we get further on, Mitzvah. Okay, let's continue on. So it's Asur Behesped Uvetainis.
So the Hesped Uvetainis, it's Asur to have a spadim or to fast. Ein L'Kamam Siman Taf Reish Pei Vav. Sif Aleph, the Mishna Berura and the Mishna Berura. Go see it's there. I guess. Okay. Hanashim women, Dafka Nashim specifically women, Lafish Nasanes Ali Dayan, because the miracle was enabled through their efforts. Come on, Besimin, as we'll see above. We will see Besif Beis Be'Hagah in the God. Yesh Mekomo Shagam Ha'anashim Machmirim Bezen. There were places where the men are also strict about this. Bo Chaneros Deleches, the whole time the candles are lit. The Beso in the house, Kdei Lahakir, Ja'aser Liz Thomas, the orange, show that it's also to use the light. V'chu b'chatzi shah, and that's roughly a half an hour. Shein Lahakal Lahem, you shouldn't be.
So I think excuse me. Someone asked about the men. What about the men? So you see here, there yesh makomos that also the men are machmir about doing this, not doing malacha during the time of the candles are lit. And what I should mention something. When in general, we'll be learning the Hilchas Hanukah. In general, when it talks about the time that the neros are lit, we're talking about the time that they're mechayev to be lit. Meaning you could fill up your glass with oil to last a day and a half if you want. Now you could light a nail that'll be lasting 36 hours, but that's and if you do very nice, you could light it to last all night and all through the day. But the only time you have to have, I believe we'll see clearly, it's going to be a half an hour. It has to light for half an hour after Tzeitzah Chachavim. So really the only time you need in the time of not doing malacha is basically a half an hour, right? If it's going to be after Tzeitzah Chachavim, meaning if you light earlier, right? Well, we'll see the halachas about whether you can light earlier and how, if so, how much earlier you can light before Shkia. But it has to be a half an hour after Tzeitzah Chachavim. So we'll get, that's the time when you're free from doing malacha. But if the neros are going to land another 3, 4, 5, 6 hours after that, even though the menorah is burning, there's no need in terms of custom to not do malacha. Okay.
Right. Shein Lahakal Lahem, to not be makel with them. The Chavi Divarim Hamutarin V'acharechem Nogu Bahem Yisur, because there are things that are permitted to do and other people are noeg to forbid them. She'ein lahatir b'fneim, that you shouldn't permit it in front of them.
Yeah, this is a general rule, meaning when dealing with minhagim, different customs, the Gemara in Psachim speaks about this at length. That when you're dealing with things which are only based on customs, so not every place has accepted the custom, right? So if you're in a place where they are machmir to keep a certain thing, you can't be lenient in that place, and you can't allow people to be makel in that place because the place that they're in is strict about it.
Okay. Because of the Shilti Giborim, he's keen with Shuvas Hacham Tzvi, and it's also read in the Shuvas of the Chacham Tzvi. Shuvachom Shinogu Iser Melasos Melacha Kol Yom, in a place where they have, it's us to do work all day. Lynch Lamachos Biyadam, you push aside their hands. Ki Habatla Avera.
Yesh limchos biyadam. You should protest against him. That was what it means, that you should protest against him. And you
to do right all day. Ki habatla averahu, because the idleness is an avera. Umevi lidei siamum.
Shamum is a form of mental instability. People are going to become unsettled. If they have nothing to do, people become very unsettled.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
People start looking for trouble. Right. Okay, that'll bring us to Siv Beis.
Okay, Siv Beis. Ribui Hasudos Shemarbe Bahem Sudos Harashus. We increase the Sudos because there are Sudos Rashus.
Yeah, no, it's a statement. Ribu Yasuda Shemar bin Behem, meaning the proliferation of the festive celebrations, the proliferation of the Hanukah parties, right? You should know these are Sudas Rishus, right? It's not a mitzvah. Not a mitzvah to go to a Hanukkah party, even though there happen to be lots of them around, but it's only a rishus, it's not a mitzvah.
Shalok Kavus the Mishta with Simcha, because there was no Kavus of Mishta and Simcha that was decreed for Hanukkah?
Right, Mishta specifically is talking about Mishta. Mishta means feasting, and Simcha is rejoicing. So as the Mishnah Berura said, it's Simcha v'Halel. There's Simcha v'Halel. There's rejoicing, right? There's rejoicing, and there's Halel, but there's not Mishta. There's no feasting. And contrast to Purim. In Purim, you have a chi of Mishta v'Simcha. You have both feasting and rejoicing.
V'yesh omrim sheyesh b'tzat mitzvah b'ribuy hasudos. There are those who say that there's a small mitzvah to increase the sudos, v'shum to the osam hayamim haya Hanukah Mizbeh, because in those days they dedicated the base of Mikdash. Nogan lower were practiced to say Zmiros, V'tisbrachos, V'asudos, Shemar B'hem. We sing songs and praises in the sudas that we are increasing for them. Ozharei sudas mitzvah. There, then it becomes a sudas mitzvah. Those days you should eat cheese on Hanukkah. Lefisha shanes nasa becholav she achalti Yehudas es oyev, because it was cheese or milchiks that Yehudas gave to her enemy.
Right. Let's we have time yet. Let's begin cutting below.
Okay, so Mishna Berura, Shalom Kavon Mishna or Simcha was not decreed celebrations during Hanukkah. El Hodos, just praise and thanksgiving. Benira Hatam Delo Kavua Kain Simcha Kamo Purim. The reason we didn't decree Simcha like we do on Purim, give Purim Hagazera Lahashmid Laharog as a Hagufos. Because by Purim the Gezer was to kill all of the people, the bodies. Shibutu Mishta Simcha, which would mavatal the idea of simcha of celebrating and happiness. Loas hanafashos, but not the spirit, or the okay. Shafilu chasiru hem chas v'shal shafilu hemu daitam chas v'shal lohaya mekabel osam.
Meaning that even if at the time of Purim, even if we would have Has V'Sholem reneged our faith, right? Achashveros and Haman would not be interested. They could care less. We're not interested. We just don't want just like a Malach. A Malach's interested in just they shouldn't be Jews. That's the main point. They don't whether they're religious, unreligious, doesn't matter. You give up your faith. Has V'Sholem not give up your faith. Doesn't matter to us. We just don't want Jews, right? So therefore, you're
right. L'ka kishe hitzilam hakadosh baruch b'menu kavua lahalu shabchu yisbar gamkein anidei mishta simcha. Therefore, when Hashem saved us, we established praise and other forms of praise to Hashem. We also established this through celebration and simcha. Mashen Kain, Antiochus, which is not the case of Antiochus. Shlo Gozer Alhaim Lahashmi. He did not go. It was not his gezer was not to kill the Jews. Rak Latzaros Ushmados Kadei Lahami Daita. It only was to pressure them to change their beliefs. Commercial anu omrim lahashkichem toroschel or haviron me'al chukei ritzonecha, and to get us to not follow the words of Hashem. Ve'im hayu Yisrael machniim lahem lios kivushim tachas yadam lahatzlos lahem Maas v'chozrin le'emunosehem chas v'shalom lo hayu mivakshin yoter. And if the Jews had given up their belief in Hashem and followed the practices of the Goyim, they would have been happy with that. That's all they were asking for.
Also, that they should pay tribute. They should pay taxes. They should pay tribute. All they had to do was submit and to their enemies and give them their tribute, their taxes, and go back on their religion. Chas v'sholom. Our enemies would have been very happy and they wouldn't have asked anything more of us. Just like we become like any other nation and without faith.
Ela shehikbir hakadosh baruch hu yadril v'nitzchum, but Hashem strengthened the hand of the Jews and they conquered them. Kach lo kavuz ela l'halal lahodos bavad. So we only were decreed praise and various types of praise alone. Clone, which is to say, kivin shehim rasul limnoa oso mizeh, that they wanted to overturn us in this in our spiritual actions, to change our ways and change our beliefs. Buzarto Yisparach Lo Hivku the Mamam Gavria
with Russell Yisbarach, and with the help of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Hafkiu Zamam, it wasn't successful their plot. From Zamam, like 80 Zamamim, right? Their plot, the conspiracy. The Gavru al Yadenu, and we became victorious over them.
Okach anu modim shabchim lo al shahaya lonu lelohim lo azavonu me'avruso. And therefore we give thanks and agree on that we were serving Hashem, we were going to be faithful to Hashem, and we did not change our beliefs.
And we didn't forsake his serving. We didn't forsake his avodas. We didn't forsake serving. Even in spite of the terrible oppression that they tried to do to us, and they were doing to us, nevertheless, we didn't forsake serving Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the real celebration of Hanukah, and therefore there's no real mitzvah of Mishna, right? Feasting is not a mitzvah on Hanukah in the same way it's a mitzvah on Purim. Okay, very good, Eliezer Tzvi. We'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.
Hey, everybody.
Very good. Be well.
Thank you.
Okay. Ishkaya.